Hi, my name is Jack Ohringer, and I'm a rising senior at Valley High School in West Des Moines, Iowa. I am creating this film, called The Business of Medicine, to further explore the possible future I could have in combining both business and medicine into a career. I've interviewed 3 practicing physicians and 1 CEO of a large medical group in order to help me decide what I would like to pursue in higher education. Thank you for taking time out of your day to watch this video, and I hope you enjoy. My name is Jack Ohringer, and today I am going to be doing an interview with Dr. Michael Jacoby. Dr. Michael Jacoby is a neurologist at Mercy Neurology Clinic, a director of Mercy Stroke Center, and a professor of medicine at Des Moines University teaching neurology. I'm here today with Dr. Philip Baer. He is a cardiologist at Iowa Heart, and he has been there practicing there for 27 years now. I'm here today with Dr. Salma Zafar. She is a non-invasive cardiologist at Unity Point in Des Moines, Iowa. Mr. Brown is the current CEO at Iowa Clinic, a nationally recognized high-quality care clinic. He was also the former board chair for the American Medical Group Association.
Well, my family has a tradition because both my parents were physicians, and they felt that the best career choice for a female is medicine, where you're able to show more compassion and also give more time to your patients, and they felt that this was the right profession for me. When I started going to medical school, I realized that they were absolutely right, and ever since then I've really enjoyed what I do.
I grew up a rural farm kid, and I was fortunate enough to have a lot of latitude of freedom in decision making and things like that I really enjoyed in terms of my dad raising me on the farm. And I considered going into agriculture and whether I wanted to do that or not, but I seem to be drawn more towards trying to make a difference in the area of healthcare and something for mankind, that I felt like I could do something meaningful in that area. And I did not really know for the longest time what I wanted to do. I didn't know if it was in medicine or some other area, and certainly nursing wasn't on the horizon. And I ended up deciding that I would just begin to dabble in it, and I'd see where it took me from there.
Well, the reason I decided to get into medicine is that I always had it since a little kid. My parents tell me fascination with medicine. Even at age 5, they said that I was talking about becoming a doctor. I think a little bit had to do with my grandmother, who was a hypochondriac and was always thinking that something was wrong with her, and she took me to the doctor all the time, so I became very familiar with hospitals in Kansas City, Missouri, where I grew up. And I started reading books on medicine, and just I always loved science, and something that just kind of came natural to me. As far as neurology goes, I've always had a fascination with the brain and the mind and how powerful it is, and I've always been reading all sorts of books, mind theory and brain theory. So I pursued a course in a career in neurology.
I had a strong interest in the sciences going to high school, and I went to college with the idea that I wanted to learn about the human body, about human physiology, anatomy, about the way people behave. And it really wasn't until I went to medical that I decided that I wanted to practice medicine as opposed to teach or be in research.
Just from this first question I asked, I became engaged with every individual I was interviewing. They each had such unique and inspirational reasons for getting into medicine. The answers to this question have really helped fuel my passion for medicine, making it even greater than it already was.
I went to school, undergraduate, at the University of Evansville in Evansville, Indiana, and I studied both nursing and business. But I got there in an indirect way. A year prior to that, I'd gone into pharmacy, and I wasn't in pharmacy, and I was on a full ride scholarship. And I wasn't doing that very long where I realized this wasn't for me. I just didn't see myself being a pharmacist in either research or even in clinical aspects. And I sort of fell into it because we'd had a pharmacy in our small community, and it wasn't open anymore. And my family had said, hey, if you go off and get educated in that, you can do that and probably still do farming. And I thought that sounded like a good idea, but when I got into it and realized how much that wasn't me, I decided to change courses. So I transferred and went to the University of Evansville, majoring in nursing and business, completed that coursework, went to Washington University in St. Louis, was double majored in, get my master's in health administration and in business administration. And I ended up only completing my master's in health administration because I had a great opportunity and saw that that opportunity was important enough to take at the time, that if I wanted to go back, I could. And the rest of my career is history.
Well, I obtained my undergraduate degree at the University of Missouri, and then I went on to obtain a medical degree at the University of Missouri, Kansas City School of Medicine. From there, I then moved to the University of Iowa, where I completed my neurology residency, chief residency, and then fellowship in vascular medicine. That's predominantly, in a nutshell, my training.
And what was your undergraduate degree in?
It was a degree in biology with an emphasis in psychology and physiology with a focus in neurophysiology.
I went to undergraduate education at Claremont Colleges in Southern California. I went to a school called Pitzer College. And from there, after I graduated, I went to medical school at the University of Osteopathic Medicine here in Des Moines. It's now called Des Moines University. From there, I went to the University of Missouri, Kansas City for my internal medicine residency for 3 years. And following that, I went to the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, Ohio for my cardiology fellowship.
Well, I had an unusual undergraduate experience where my mother was actually in WHO and then was in the Middle East, and so there was a difficulty in trying to get into different schools or high schools when we were in the Middle East. So I was homeschooled throughout my high schools from 9th through the 12th grade. So since there wasn't much we could do and we lived in Saudi Arabia where women cannot drive, it was hard for my mother to transport us to school. So I completed 4 years of high school in 2 years, and I graduated from high school at the age of 15 and a half. So I went to med school. I got accepted in King Edward Medical College, which is the oldest and the most premier medical school in Pakistan, and was the over 100 years old medical school. So I got accepted there at the age of 16, and I completed medical school at the age of 21. So that was basically my initial educational experience for my graduate and undergraduate combined. In Pakistan, there's no undergrad. You go from high school to medical school. This is the British system. This is how they have established it. And then from there on, I came to the United States, and I was very fortunate. I got the clearance of my exams to pursue education here, and I ended up doing my internal medicine residency in Washington Hospital Center in Washington, D.C., and was accepted in my cardiology fellowship. I had applied to about 3 cardiology fellowship programs because I had young children, and it was hard for me to move away from where my husband was working. And I got one single interview, and that was the one place where I interviewed and I got accepted. So it just shows you that a lot of it is your hard work, but luck is involved too. And so I got my cardiology fellowship there and trained there for 3 years.
While this question was extremely straightforward, I was surprised by the difference in answers between the 4 interviewees. I was especially intrigued by Dr. Zafar's unique journey into practicing medicine in America. The difference in how both Dr. Zafar and Dr. Baer studied to reach the same final destination as a practicing cardiologist in Iowa is just another thing that adds to the beauty of the medical field. Can you talk a little bit about your MBA?
Yeah, so I had been in the medical field practicing in private practice for approximately 12 years or so, and I felt that there was always a part of me that needed something more. And when I was not in medical school and I was in high school, I always wanted to go into the business side of things. But my dad told me that no, medicine has to be your career choice. So that previous desire continued to tug at me, so I decided to see if I could apply to the University of Iowa and get into the evening MBA program so I could work and simultaneously study. And the reason I also wanted to do that was because I felt that the administration of the hospitals and of our group seemed to give us information that would be difficult to understand. And that is important information because the fuel of any business, whether it's medical or non-medical, is whether you're bringing in revenue and you're profitable. And if you are putting in a certain amount of work, you expect a certain amount of reward. And we were given explanations which sometimes were difficult to understand. So I wanted to learn more about it and speak to the managers or to the administration at their level rather than sort of at an ignorant level. So I decided to go into MBA, and I tested the waters first with a couple of classes and found it to be very interesting. And that is how I went into it. And I basically did not do just a medically focused MBA, but more like a general MBA so I could understand business in general.
Yeah, I started out just taking my clinical studies. And I had a lot of extra free time. And in the first half of my education at Evansville, I ended up taking that free time and using it to study paramedicine. So I graduated in the first class of paramedics in the state of Indiana's history. And that was a great experience, one that I still look back on and value to this day. And that's what led me, once I graduated, to work in emergency medicine as a nurse. But that also meant that I was running behind on some of my business courses. But how I answered that was the place where I worked, the hospital, paid for all my tuition. So I just kept going to school and completing my business courses. Took me a little longer, but it ended up being worth it. And so yeah, I took a few of my business courses while I was in school, but completed them after I'd already got one of my degrees.
I think it depends on what kind of medicine you're going to practice, and I think the more well-rounded you are, that can certainly benefit you. But if you're going to be doing any kind of administrative work, if you're going to be in any kind of leadership role, certainly having training as a physician executive can be very, very beneficial. And that could range from anything from an MBA to an MHA to all different kinds of physician, chief executive leadership roles.
Well, you have to understand that as much as we want to spend lengthy hours in talking to patients or doing paperwork or working on the computers, we also have to perform work based on the value that it's bringing, not just to the patient, but to the practice and to the business. So in order to do that, you have to think of it from a different mindset. Now, when physicians think, they are always taught to think as an individual, because you have to make individual decisions. You can't have 5 physicians make a decision on every patient you see. But in business, you always have teams that make decisions. And so after doing MBA, I feel that every physician needs to understand that when you make a certain decision about a certain treatment or a test that you do based on a certain expense, it can have long-lasting consequences as it builds up into volumes of those tests and treatments on the healthcare system and on the business that you are running. So based on that, you work with a team and you kind of decide what are the best facilities at the best quality and the most efficiency that you can provide. And it's very difficult. Some people may have an inborn talent to think from a business perspective, but majority of the physicians don't. And learning about it, I think, seems to help us quite a bit.
This is my first question relating medicine to business. I was especially interested in Dr. Zafar's response. As she has received an MBA from the University of Iowa, I was also really interested in Mr. Brown's response, as he has an MHA, which is very similar. I appreciated hearing the upsides of the MBA and MHA from each of them. I also enjoyed hearing the opposite point of view from Dr. Jacoby. His experience in medicine is much different than that of Dr. Zafar and Mr. Brown, so it was a nice perspective to contrast their points of view.
you know, our business is changing dramatically, and the economics of our business is changing dramatically. The advantages that I think it brings to a physician to have a business degree is not so much the intellect of being able to understand the changes of what's going on, but more about how to think and how to deal in business. Quite often in medicine, you're dealing with some isolated decision making, and it's often black or white as to how you make that decision. In business, there's a lot of gray, and being able to, one, accept that gray, figure out how to adjust and adapt to it in order to bring more definition as to what your business strategy ought to be. That's a different way of thinking. Unless you have opportunities to apply that and understand that, such as what you would do in case studies through an MBA program, or even through a health administration program, you're not really going to get that first-hand practicum of how to deal with those issues when you face them from a business side of things. I, for one, believe that having an MBA that has an emphasis in healthcare is probably a more valued degree, because it has a broader sense of applicability in other businesses other than just healthcare.
If you're going to be doing any kind of administrative work, if you're going to be in any kind of leadership role, certainly having training as a physician executive can be very, very beneficial, and that could range from anything from an MBA to an MHA to all different kinds of physician, chief executive leadership roles.
I think it'll make a tremendous difference because yes, the physicians were accountable for the care they provided to the patients, but previously physicians were not held accountable for the expense that was involved. So a physician could order 7 tests on a patient, and that patient could go to another state or another city and then be seen by another physician, and that physician could order 7 tests, and there could be a lot of repetition and extra expense. Now, when you have a physician who has learned this and who realizes that he will be accountable for the expense that he gets to have every patient, go through, he will be a lot more cautious and will make a much more careful judgment about doing those tests. So I think that in the future, with the Obamacare and with the difficulty in having the funds with the government to pay for treatment, plus a lot of people now getting to that age and living that long, physicians not just need to be careful about or cautious or accountable for the quality of service they provide, but also the expense of the service they provide.
MBA MD programs have been growing as the cultures of medicine and business have slowly started merging together. However, one thing that I really took interest in was that MBA MD programs might not be the same featured medical business program when I'm approaching graduate school. It is also important to focus on one first and then the other, so a combined program might not be for me. The following 5 questions are all unique to the medical professional answering the question. Each of these questions was a result of off-script questioning that I decided to do during the interview process. I hope you enjoy. If you went back, would you have done a combined MBA, MD program if possible?
I know some programs are offered that provide a combined MD, MBA program. I would only recommend it for somebody who has been out and working for at least 2 to 3 years. Because to me, the benefit of MBA would not have been the same as it was when I did it after a few years out in the real world. You have to experience working with people. You have to experience learning about different things. A simple example is a patient comes to the front desk and speaks to your assistant and has to stand in line. There's other people behind them. How quickly are they, processed through that line, and then they come back to see the physician. So the time that it takes for a patient to come in and the front door, and the time it takes for them to stay and leave your office, and the processes that are involved, those things you really don't understand till you're out in the real world. So if you just went and did an MBA and talked about process improvement or workflow and things like that, which are some of the essential things that you learn in MBA, you would not really get, it would mostly be like book knowledge, it wouldn't be practical. So if somebody was interested in doing MD, MBA, they should maybe work somewhere for a year or two and then try for this. Otherwise, it should be separate. So you've done MD, you've done residency, you've been out in the work environment, and then you can do MBA.
So when you began practicing medicine, how involved were you with the business side of medicine?
Oh, absolutely. I was just like any other physician who all I knew was how to see patients. I had no idea whether I was billing right or whether I was seeing patients, and giving them the right code. I had to learn that. So I was not at all aware of the business side of it. It took me a good 6-7 years. And that is more so because I joined a running practice. Had I started my own practice, I probably would have learned that within a year. But yeah, it took me a few years to figure out how the billing is done and how the funds are collected. Because people have this perception that if a doctor asks for $100, he gets $100, and that's not true. If you bill a patient $100, generally you are paid back $40. So those are the things that you learn when you get in the real world, and it gives you a rude awakening as to the amount of work you're performing versus what's coming in. And then of course the biggest problem is the overhead. Again, technology helps with that. If you have technology, you can cut back on your overhead. Otherwise, if you're bringing in $100 and you're spending 80, you really aren't, making anything for yourself.
Without having a business background, do you think you could run a practice by yourself, or do you think you would need someone with like the business side working with you?
Yeah, I'm not naive in thinking that I could run a business. As far as I think physicians are bright enough to do a number of things, and I think I have the general idea of how to run a business, but not naive enough to think that there aren't people who could do business aspects better than I. And on many occasions I've thought, right now I'm employed by a big entity, but I've thought about starting my own entity, and I thought a little bit of how I would do that. And so I would hire some people who know those aspects of business to do that, and that would be their focus. Because the only way it's going to happen well and me still be able to do what I do well is if there's that division of service. I don't think you can do both real well. You can do a little bit, but any physician who tries to run their own business without assistance of somebody who's a business specialist, so to speak, it's not, I don't think it's bright.
You studied both for your master's in healthcare administration and master's in business administration. What differences do you see, and how do you see the use of both those different degrees?
The health administration is just more focused on the business of healthcare. It's not as much of a broader perspective. I, for one, believe that having an MBA that has an emphasis in healthcare is probably a more valued degree because it has a broader sense of applicability in other businesses other than just healthcare. And some of the stronger universities around the country tend to be moving in that direction. They still offer the master's in health administration, but you see a lot of them moving to an MBA with an emphasis in healthcare.
Can you talk a little bit more about your previous experience as that leadership role in your practice?
Well, I've been with Iowa Heart for the last 27 years, or 25 years, and I've been practicing cardiology in Des Moines 27 years. And during those times, I've held various leadership roles, both in my practice and in the medical staff arena. So when serving on the executive committee for the medical staff, for instance, it was about a 5-year period where I started in as section chief, and then went into secretary, treasurer, and vice president, and then president of medical staff for a few years. And when you're involved at that level, you really, have to be really understand how the whole governance process works, but then you've got to follow the guidelines and the bylaws, the procedures. You have to help not only help form those policies, but then you've got to encourage others to be able to follow them as well.
I thought each of these answers added an interesting take on some aspect of combining medical and business aspects in different ways. From Dr. Jacoby's discussion on different layers of physicians and business-oriented individuals, to Dr. Baer's portrayal of his previous leadership role. Each of these questions help dig a little deeper into each professional's unique experience with both business and medicine.
It's probably easier to say how it's not changing. I mean, it's 190 degrees, you know, it's taken a huge change with more government regulations, more payer regulations, more consumer demand. The business side of our practice is totally different. The margins are a lot less than what they previously been. We now include quality measures in assessing how we perform, both customer satisfaction as well as trying to meet national norms for things, and we're really being held a lot more accountable than we've previously been.
The reimbursements for what we do is significantly declined from all fronts. As a result of that, in order to maintain levels, you increase volume, but you can only increase volume, or basically people you see and things you do, to a certain degree. You just can't keep increasing. So you have to find supposedly better efficiency. But efficiency sometimes it can be sacrificed. I don't believe in this, but you're going to sacrifice efficiency with the quality, sometimes with efficiency. I think there are a lot of words out in our world about quality care. We're moving from quantity to quality, and that's, I think, is nonsensical. I don't think we're moving to quality care. People haven't received quality care before. There are some things that are good that are changing towards quality, but it's I think a false facade that these words that are being used are producing a false facade of how economy is going to improve on our care, and that's nonsense. Medicine is a different commodity than the rest of the world. We're not at some fast food store like Burger King. We're not selling DVD or iPhones or iPods or what have you. We're providing a different level of a service, a commodity of health and healthcare. And how do you do that in a business world? And I think there's a mistake to try and equate medicine with business and try and make medicine a business. We have to figure out, some bright people have to step forward and figure out how to do this. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have problems. I think healthcare actually is going to have potential decline in quality and actually improvement in quality from a business, if it's a business-driven sort of model.
First of all, again, electronic medical records, there's a lot more changes with the billing. The government has implemented quite a lot of restrictions. So for instance, previously people were paid for, you see a patient, you get paid a certain amount. Now, if you see patients, they collectively look at the quality of work you've done, and there's multiple metrics that have been brought in by the government. And so you have to go by those metrics and make sure you fulfill those. So what you're compensated is not exactly what you've done, but there's other pieces to that which are measured by the government or by the payers, which may include insurance companies. So that wasn't the case in the past. It was called, what we said, it was fee for service. Now it's value-based.
Well, there's some elements of unpredictability. We have an aging population, and the availability of a number of providers to take care of that population as we see it today is a bit challenging because we have a lot of retirements and not as many physicians coming into the system. But we also see more advanced care practitioners coming in, like nurse practitioners and physician assistants. And as it relates to the changes that are going on, probably the most significant areas we're going to be delivering care in different modality options. What I mean by that is we'll be using technology in a more advanced way, where we might have do some patient visits by using these types of mobile devices, where we can do electronic visits. We can even do diagnosing. When we think about rural Iowa and the access to healthcare out in rural Iowa, while there may be fewer providers, these things will become even more important. If we have fewer providers, we have to do more with less. And the economics of healthcare, our country can't afford, as a percent of gross domestic product, to continue to see the rapid rise in the expense of healthcare. So we have to do it more efficiently. And as we do it more efficiently, we have to figure out not only how to do it with less cost, but we have to have better outcomes. And it's not good enough to do it cheaply. We have to do it better. And you know, if we're not achieving both of those standards as we look into the future, then we need to pause and figure out how to work those things out. So when I look out there about how things are changing, I don't know what the business model will exactly be, but I do believe it needs to be more efficient and will be more efficient because of technology and advances in pharmacology and biologics. But I also think the same thing is that we need to advance the quality outcomes and do more preventative medicine to keep patients healthy in a much more effective way too.
Well, I think there's going to be the disappearance of the independent medical group. I think all physicians are going to be working for one type of a health system or another, and but be much more integration on a state, regional, multi-state level in the future.
There's going to be a huge disruptive force coming into the field of medicine in the United States, again, mostly through technology. We have now video-based medical care, we have telemedicine, we have now a phone app-based medical care. You could be on your iPhone sitting in a desert, and if you want to see a doctor, you can just pull up your phone and make an appointment to see your doctor on the phone. So there's so much change coming along. I believe the only thing that is now not as much as risk is surgery, but that too will eventually be at risk when robotics is more and more, used to implement it.
These two questions I felt were some of the most important questions in the film. I think it is very important to consider the always changing environment in medicine. With the amount it has changed recently, and the possibility of medicine being completely via technology in the future, there's a chance that everything in this video is completely irrelevant by the time I get to medical school. However, medicine is always going to be a necessary good. People will always be getting sick and injured, and there will always be medical professionals needed.
I think there's probably a lot more options and courses of study to become a practicing physician than maybe what people realize. I've seen physicians who have studied biology and economics. What a different set of combinations. Economics is a science, but it's a science of business. And is it preparatory? Yes. Is it preparatory for science of medicine? Probably not. But it helps you in terms of how to think. I've seen people go into nursing, and nursing being more of a focus on the sciences, but the humanity of medicine, and that being a great. I don't think there is a single route. I've seen biology, chemistry. I've seen math majors, engineers. So I don't think there's absolutely a single course for which a student has to go down. I think that's one of the misperceptions I think you need to talk to counselors and get ideas of what those options might be and what might fit for you. Some people went a course of study and changed gears because they realized that that's not what they wanted to be, and they went back to medical school after taking a few additional courses. I tell people that we try, young men and women like yourself, that we try to define for ourselves our absolute course in life on the front end when we're 18 years of age. That's an unfair thing to do. We're just beginning to branch out with that autonomy and independence of discovering life, and we are trying to set that coursework with an absolute definition. One, it's not necessary, and I'm living proof of it. Thought I wanted to be a pharmacist. Went into nursing because I didn't know what I wanted to be, but I figured out one thing, that I got out of nursing, and with a few more courses, I had a pipeline of different choices, much greater than what I ever imagined. I could have gone into law, I could have gone into business, I could have gone into medicine, I could have gone into other areas. So I lead back to young men and women the challenge of, you may want to pursue being a physician. There's a lot of different pathways to get there, so when you talk to your counselor, you say, look, I have this interest, and this is where I think I might want to go. But I also have this interest, and I may want a double major, or I may just want to have a single major. Maybe I want to be on the 5-year plan as opposed to the 4-year plan. And by the way, the 5-year plan is not 5 years to get 1 degree. That's 5 years to get 2 degrees. And I say that because many, if you're talking about being academically focused, that's what I mean by that. You're investing a lot of money, your parents are, or you are, in your education, so you want to be as efficient with that as you can possibly be. But at the same time, you want your education to broaden your view of the world. You want your education to be fun and challenging, and give you perspectives of things that you never had the opportunity to get before.
Well, I think that you, whether it be a physician or an artist, you're driven by, you should be driven by what it is that really moves you and what you want to do. And of course, I'm a believer in the brain and the mind. I think that's what often drives us to do what we do. You're somewhat influenced by your environment, but physicians have a certain makeup, and I don't think they all came to the conclusion of being a physician just because it sounded neat. And the ones, if anyone is driven towards it for an economic gain, they may not be as happy as those who find, even in what I think is right now some hard times where things are changing. They're not changing to the better for physicians, at least not economically, and also in terms of our relative worth. I think we're being devalued as our physician wealth, not economically, but our being is being devalued. And so you have to be driven, and I think we are driven. We're all very similar. We're a similar group of people. And I think you study science, you eventually study medicine, and that's the course of study. I'm not sure about throwing in there business or administrative sorts of things. I don't know where that really fits. If that, some people may find a special knack at doing that also. But in order to do it well, again, I think you have to have some experience. I think you have to have had some boots on the ground before you suddenly become some sort of business manager or administrative manager in medicine. I see some people rising right after medical school in administrative posts because I think they don't want to see patients. They know it's tough. They want to make their money maybe through administrative routes. But you don't see generals suddenly being exalted to the post of generals. They are ground troops first. They start out at the bottom and they work their way up. And that way, hopefully, they have better experience and knowledge, understanding of the system, and can be better leaders and molders of our future medical world.
That's perfect.
I think a good liberal arts education with emphasis on the sciences is good. I think having a little bit of basic business knowledge is very good. But I think having a well-rounded education and a kind of global view of the world and understanding other peoples and other cultures, and perhaps being fluent in a foreign language could be, if I was looking at what would be ideal, that would be the mix that I'm looking at.
Awesome.
Of course, you have to do the necessary ones like biology and physics and organic chemistry. But with the new requirements in the MCAT, I think psychology and sociology are also very important. I do feel that learning the art of providing compassion, so volunteering in a place where you are dealing with people who are in need, because the biggest pleasure you get as a physician is when you see that somebody needs you. In most other things, a machine may need you or a bank account may need you, but here people need you. And the pleasure you have, even if you have one person come and say that you helped me or saved my life, is tremendous. So in order to be able to provide that care, you also have to have the element of empathy and humanity in you. And so you need to learn that in a lot of ways. It comes naturally, but it's difficult to display those feelings, and especially for guys. So working in a hospice, working in a place where there's people who are of special needs, I think will be very helpful, because it creates that sense of responsibility in you, that you're there for them and you have to do the best in providing them that care.
In conclusion, this summer's worth of exploring my interests has really taught me a lot. I've decided that I will pursue an undergraduate degree in business while still continuing my passion in medicine by taking the required pre-med courses and possibly obtaining a part-time job or externship working in a medical practice with the less fortunate. I will then aim to complete an MD and eventually an MBA if I feel the need for one. This film has helped me take perspective from all different sides of the medical and business fields and has truly helped shape who I want to be. I cannot thank the doctors, Dr. Saima Zafar, Dr. Michael Jacoby, and Dr. Philip Baer, and the medical executive, Mr. Edward Brown, enough for helping me on my journey. If you have watched this all the way through, I hope you learned a little bit more about me and my journey, but I also hope that you learned a little bit about yourself and can take something positive away from this film. I will leave you with a few clips of the awkward handshakes from the beginning of each interview. Thank you for watching.
It's good to see you again.
Thank you for allowing me to interview.